Welcome back to Let Me Ask You Something. This week's episode is a panel discussion that happened at the 20th anniversary celebration of Etgar 36 back in February of 2024. On the panel is myself, but also two people that I vehemently disagree with politically and yet have a deep personal relationship with. One is Jim Pfaff. He was president of the Colorado Family Institute. He was the national representative of family policy for Focus on the Family, and he is currently the president of the Conservative Caucus. And Jim serves as the major foil on the summer trip. He is really who the teens disagree with completely, and one of the more heated discussions that really tests their ability and how far they've come to talking with people you disagree with. Because Jim talks about his opposition to marriage equality. He also talks about the fact that he believes climate change is not man-made and therefore can't be fixed, nor should it be fixed. He's also pro-life. Clark Aposhin is a gun rights activist and lobbyist. He's the owner of Fair Warning Training in Utah and the host of the Gun Radio Utah show. And he speaks about gun rights. And in this day and age of school shootings, of prep in schools, he also stands in opposition to many of what these kids believe. And so it is fascinating to watch their interactions. But on this panel, the three of us talk about how we have developed and cultivated a deep friendship while vehemently disagreeing. The moderator of the panel is Rabbi Peter Berg of the Temple here in Atlanta, but also he is a father of an alum of the summer trip. Now I do want you to pay attention at the beginning because there is an encounter that could have gotten extremely heated, except I let it slide because I understood the bigger importance was having the discussion. At the very beginning, Rabbi Berg tells the audience that he actually is a bigger Springsteen fan than I am just because he is from Asbury Park, New Jersey. Now just take note how I just let it go. I didn't feel the need to have to react, while we all know he's extremely wrong on that. I'll have my time in the sun. Enjoy, like, subscribe, and share this episode. And please leave a comment. Let us know what you think.
I was like, if we're getting together for Etgar, we've got to have sort of an Etgar experience here. So all of Etgar is based on talking to people you might not talk to, or people you disagree with in America today. And so we're going to have a panel discussion, because I am asked constantly right now, how do you do that? How do you talk to people you disagree with? And so I'm glad to call up a good friend of the program and a father of one of the alumni, of one of the alums, Rabbi Peter Berg. I get asked by a lot of Reform groups who come on the trip, do you know the rabbi at the temple? And I get such credit from them when I say, oh yes, we're friendly. So I appreciate calling you up. And also I'm going to call up Clark Aposhin, who speaks with our groups about pro-gun rights, and Jim Pfaff. Come on up, Jim. Legendary amongst the group, as Jim voluntarily takes the sides that hardly any teenager will agree with. And is probably where the most deep breathing happens on our trip, is at these meetings. And yet afterwards, for years on, all the teens tell me how much they value speaking to people they disagree with. They might not then, but they learn about the value of it. And also you're here. It means so much. So we're going to come on up here.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Peter Berg. It's great to be here with you. As Billy said, first of all, mazel tov to Billy and to Etgar on this amazing milestone. It feels so good to be here. I'm not really here in my capacity as a rabbi. I'm here as a proud father. My son Matan went on the trip a few years ago, and I remember dropping him off at the AA synagogue and walking him over to Billy and saying, he's all yours now, good luck. He's got a very, very strong will. He's got a very specific point of view. And he had such a great time and learned so much. And really what he loved the most about the experience was this idea that he got to meet people that he thought he would have disagreed with and ended up having a lot in common and learning a lot from them. So I'm grateful for that. I remember actually on the very first couple days into the trip, he called and I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm really excited. Billy said he's getting ready for a big lecture, something very important, and we're going to learn about it." And so I called afterwards. I said, "How was the lecture?" I thought he was going to learn about Tikkun Olam or something like that. He said it was basically the history of rock and roll. And that's where he was introduced to Springsteen. I'm from Asbury Park, New Jersey, so I'm even more of a Springsteen fan than Billy. And grateful that he came back and wanted to see a concert with me. So that, you did good. And of course, he would occasionally walk up, like I know some of you did, and just plop himself next to Billy in Iowa, who probably wanted to take a nap, and would just start talking to him. And he still goes to Billy for advice when Dad's not cutting it. So thank you for that. So to our distinguished group, welcome, and thank you for flying in to be here today. I know it means a lot to all of, especially the alumni who interacted with you. I want to start with Billy, though, and ask you, when you decided to create this program and to create a bus, why was it important to create a program in which teens would interact with people that they completely might disagree with? Why did you, it would have been much easier just to say, here's what the Jewish perspective is on whatever, let's do it. But you came up with a totally different program.
Right. So I can't say that much of my life I knew I could see it laying out in front of me. It's only in hindsight where I'm like, oh, I see how this happens. And part of the step towards Etgar, creation of Etgar, was meeting with somebody that unfortunately the last couple of years have not met with. And this was a man named Alan Canfora at Kent State University, who was shot in 1970 on May 4th at the on Kent State campus. And he was shot by his government, and yet he was still involved in politics. And I was just talking to him. I met him and we were talking. And all of a sudden, it was that idea of still being active that I realized activism is really important. But then, according to the news, I was like, we are in a problem here. People need to talk. And by the way, make it more interesting. Talking to people I agree with, it's fun, but it's like eating chocolate for dinner. It doesn't really fill you. It's really only through bouncing your ideas, test driving your ideas. And so it was that idea of, let me just get teenagers to do it, and that way others will do it.
Amazing. And people all over the country talk about this being one of the few programs anywhere where you get to interact with people, where it's not a prescribed, this is what we do and thing. It's, here are all the options, you decide what you think. So it's pretty remarkable. To Clark and Jim, first of all, I had a great time speaking with both of you at the hors d'oeuvre table before we started, and you can see why you're so popular amongst all the students who go on the program. So Billy calls you one day and says, I want you to speak to a group of teens who are coming in hot-blooded. They've got, what makes you say yes to speak to a group of teens on an issue where that many of them are really coming in?
Well, okay, here we are. So I'm a lobbyist, and as a firearms lobbyist and also an instructor, it doesn't do any good to try to cajole. I've never written a check to any legislator ever. If I can't educate them on why our view is the correct one to vote for, and educate them rather than pay them to do it, it just doesn't do any good. And so when I thought, these kids are now that you're adults, and will be adults, they'll be the ones that are asking to vote for my bills at some point. And we're gonna have disagreements. If there's anything, that is a polarizing topic in the United States, it's firearms. And I know the facts, I know the data, but I gotta tell you, Billy, what I didn't expect was to be schooled by the kids. And to understand, to seek to then understand. My first couple were just, I just get out there and give the facts, but when I actually sought to understand the questions that they would give me, that, somebody out there would give me, I used later on as a better understanding. So, and we're going to disagree in life. We're going to disagree, but can we disagree better? Is something that can we disagree without violence? And I think we can do that if we seek to understand what the other side is doing.
Learning how to disagree well is, I think, the greatest skill any of us can have.
It's interesting how it all happened for me. There was a guy in the state who had already been speaking to the kids. This was 2006, and I was running the marriage amendment in Colorado. And Jim Chapman was his name, and Jim calls me and he says, "Hey, can you speak to this group of kids that I speak to every year? I just can't be there." And I'm like, "Well, sure, yeah, well, tell me about it." He said, "Well, they're probably all going to totally disagree with you, and they can be real aggressive or whatever." I don't remember the words he used precisely, but it's kind of along those lines. And I'm like, "Okay, cool, yeah, I'll do that." And then I was working at Focus on the Family at the time, and I told some folks I was going to do this, and like, "What are you doing that for?" Why are you doing that? I said, I love that kind of stuff. So I like the challenge. And Billy and I, in this regard, kind of connect really well because I really am bored sometimes with people that agree with me. I mean, it's not that, and I say that maybe harsher than what I really mean, but it's just that doesn't ever get anybody anywhere. And quite frankly, I find people who are in their silos, I don't care where they're at, on the political spectrum or the cultural spectrum or wherever, when they only talk to the people that they agree most with, they end up becoming, frankly, really boring people. And I don't mean any direct offense to people, but I do mean a challenge, because I have found that people's ideas and opinions have very rough edges if they haven't been challenged. That's what the whole polishing process is. And so this is the only way for that to happen. So, I mean, from my perspective, Billy's perspective, it's frankly what's the most important in life. And where we're at right now in this country, for one thing.
So I've heard Billy say numerous times that you are all really genuinely friends, and I heard both of you say it before the program as well. Is that you're really genuinely friends?
Yes, I mean, first of all, you got to know that they would give their time for something I created is amazing to me. Jim has flown into Colorado when he moved from Colorado just for the meeting and then flew back. I mean, so we are friends, and Clark and wife, we talk, we're just good friends here talking. How does that happen? I don't care that we disagree. I understand that we disagree. So there is not much that actually we agree on. In fact, nothing.
Not true.
Except for we do meet on the need to talk to people we disagree with. And the importance that if we're talking, then we're going to move forward, right? And so that bond and that desire, but how do I internally deal with it? I know we're not going to agree on many political issues. They're not my concern. My concern is people who do think like me, are they going to get out and vote? Are they going to show up? So I'm not going to change their minds. I'm not going to spend my time doing that. So we meet about other things. The quick popular story is when I would talk to set up our meeting with Jim, it would have to be a 2.5 hour conversation. Anytime we talk on the phone, it'd be like it would be nothing about that. But one Sunday, I was like, Jim, I can't talk to you anymore. I just want to have a good day. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be angry anymore. I'm going to watch football. I love watching football. I don't want to ruin this day anymore. And he said, oh my God, I want to watch football too. We like football together. We finally agree on this. I said, oh great, who are you rooting for? He goes, well, I'm from Indianapolis. I love the Colts. I'm like, Jim, I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. They're playing each other.
By the way, that was one of the most hilarious moments in my life. Because, like, seriously, we're sitting there just loving football. Oh, wow, cool, wow, we love football. And then our teams are playing against each other at that time. It is absolutely, it's worthless, by the way, if you're not friendly with everybody outside of particularly political opinions in this day and age. If you're not capable of that, you are not completely and fully a human being or acting like one. Because it's a real problem. I just today, and I know not everybody can do it and others would than the ones that did, but like, people come flocking to me that have been on the trip, kids that have been on the trip. I mean, it's kind of funny because I think there have been a few times when the kids are coming in and there's a decent amount of anxiety, even though they've heard the stories. Well, early on, it was probably more that way because it kind of got around. And so there'd be some anxiety, and then there was some during the discussion, in the sense of disagreement. It's not like I'm yelling and screaming at the kids or anything. I'm just, saying what I think. And then at the end of it, it's like hard to pull the bus away because they want to keep talking to me. Some because they had a further question, but most because they wanted, I think, frankly, they wanted to hang out with me a little bit because we had fun together. So it's a challenge to your humanity, to be candid, if it's really hard to be friends with people. If you can only find your silo of people to be friends with, you need to really kind of look at yourself a little bit more closely. That's how critical this is, I think.
Yeah, to answer your question, Casey Jane, my wife, and I, we love Billy. And he is, Billy is a hand-wringing, bedwetting liberal. And we love him. But Jim, what you said, yeah, you're gonna meet folks that you're polar opposites with, and it probably just because they have a different view than you. One of our very, very, very dear friends, who has been to our home and stayed over for a few nights, is the House Minority Leader in Utah. And if you know anything about Utah, the minority is not the Republicans, it's the Democrats. And she was the House Minority Leader, and she disagrees with everything that I promote, but we are extremely good friends, and we love her, just like I love Billy, because you're right, we just disagree, but that's okay, we can still be friends.
In fact, last night, I was like, Clark, what are you up to? He goes, well, I'm pushing through some bills and I'm killing some bad bills. And then he looked at me and said, well, when I say bad bills, you probably like them. And I said, I already did that translation in my head. I understood that. But at the bottom of the day, we just disagree. And it doesn't really matter to me that they don't see where I'm going. I don't need 100% acceptance. That's a cult. I need to talk to people who might slightly agree with me, may need more information. They're not going where I'm going, which is the right side of history. But
So you have an Etgar group before you, right, during the summer trips, and what does success look like? And Clark and Jim, for you, what does it look like? What do you hope to get out of, you're walking in, you have an hour with the group. What do you hope? What does success look like? And Billy, for you, what do you hope the group is going to walk away from? I mean, how do you have this kind of conversation, and how do you define success?
Boy, I could go forever on that, but perhaps an understanding and enlightening and enlarging of the conversation, and enlarging of the discussion. And I know I've hit it, and I'm at a point when, usually once during a trip, or once during my brief interaction with them, one of the young men or young women will ask a question, and their voice will be cracking a little bit. It'll be a very awkward question because they have a personal history with perhaps somebody who committed suicide, or they have a friend who was killed by firearm violence. And I understand they trust me enough to ask that question. And I realize it's success because I don't have to give a data point. I don't have to give a statistic. They just want to be understood. And now it's my opportunity, and that's what I think of success is. I get a chance to understand them. And then when they come up after and they say, I don't agree with you, but I understand a little bit more where you're coming from. So.
Okay, so raise your hand if you're on the trip and you remember after you've loaded onto the bus after our thing, Billy and I standing there talking for like 15, 20 minutes. Raise your hand if you're, yeah, okay. Well, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The thing we're talking about is, yeah, so how is this group of kids? How do you think, are they doing, you know, what's their heart like? I mean, that's really the measure of success. I remember one, I'm not gonna say which one because I don't want to give away which one it was, but Billy will remember it. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about these kids. Where are they at right now? They just seem to not have quite engaged. We were worried and concerned about it. I'm welling up in tears thinking about it. But that's the thing that I always was most, I can't well up in tears, but that's the thing I was always most concerned about because it's, you gotta have a heart. You have to be able to engage with what's going on and you know, in a serious and significant way. And in a way that's going to be useful for the rest of your life. And I think, looking back at 660 kids, not all of them I saw, obviously, and then coming to this and hearing the stories, it's like, wow. I mean, and in fact, some of you came up to me today and you're like, oh man, yeah, that was so helpful for me, and then it caused me to blah, 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 whatever that was. That's success. And I mean, that's what Billy and I always talk about, without exception, when it comes to kids. That's success in my mind, is when you get that kind of reaction. I'm so proud of every one of you, by the way, too, that were on trips that I was on, and some of you haven't talked to yet, and some I did. It's amazing to me. I sit back thrilled and in awe. So anyway.
Hard. So success to me came in a few ways. Overall, when designing Etgar, it was that the teens would come to their ideas through critical thinking, not just because they heard something or their parents told them. But then success to me was always one of the conundrums was I was close with the speakers, and so I'd spend this time after talking to them, but also part of me wanted to get back on the bus because there was nothing more amazing to me than listening to the debate going on the bus. When they got on the bus, they would debate with each other, and then we'd show up at like, I don't know, amusement park or something. They would jump off the bus, go play that, and then they'd hear debates later. Success also has been, and especially recently in the Jewish community, hearing from parents of the alumni who realize that there's teens on college campuses are not afraid of voices that are going against who they are, contrary to what they think. They're actually seeking them out. And in this post-October 7th world in the Jewish community on college campus is an interesting place to be at best. So to hear that they're like, of course I'm going to talk to them.
I want to share a very brief Jewish teaching with you all and just get your reaction to it. There's a teaching that says that the Torah has 70 faces. And if you want to get as close as possible to the truth, you have to look at all 70 faces of the Torah. Right? Meaning a verse of the Torah could be interpreted 70 different ways. Any idea could be interpreted 70 different ways. So to get to the truth, you have to really dive deep and look at 70 different aspects. That means about the environment, about the Second Amendment, about all these important issues that you're talking about. Do you resonate with that there is no singular truth, that there's actually a multiplicity of avenues to get to the truth?
I don't know that there's there's 70 of them.
It was a long time ago.
But yeah, but you know what? What I knew as the truth 20 years ago isn't necessarily the same truth I understand now.
I take it as, and this is something I talk with the teens on the bus all the time, is remember the phrase, to you. It's the truth to you. Doesn't mean Jim's truth is going to be mine, but my truth is to me. And there's a great, I have two rabbis from Jersey, you and Springsteen, but there's another singer-songwriter named Paul Thorne out of Tupelo, Mississippi. And he has a great song about talking to people and the need to talk with people. And the name of the song is Don't Forget You Could Be Wrong. So I will sit there and debate my side with the understanding that I could be wrong. I don't think so. And as you said right now, I don't think so. But I always have to allow for maybe I might be wrong there.
Maybe slightly unpopular opinion, but I think quite real, and you'll understand what I mean by it. And we're like what you said is right on target, so I'm definitely agreeing with that. Truth is objectively true or false, okay? The problem isn't truth, the problem's us. We're the problem. I'm fond of saying in recent years that 6,000 years of recorded human history proves the moral depravity of man. If you can't, and that doesn't mean we're as bad as we absolutely could be at every given time. That's not what moral depravity means. What it means is that, would the person in this room that has never sinned or failed or caused harm to others, raise your hand, please. Yeah, that's what I thought. And this is the problem with truth. The problem with truth is us. It's not truth. Okay. And now, interestingly, I'm not sure. I know of the 70 facets thing. I'm kind of a theology geek, but I don't know how far back it goes. So, but it is interesting that the disciples came to Jesus and said, "How often should we forgive? 7 times? Forgive a person 7 times?" He said, "No, 70 times 7." Why? Because there are numerous facets. So I don't know if it goes back to teaching that far. Okay, so Jesus was clearly drawing on that teaching in talking about that. And what's amazing about that is that we don't see and know everything, and you do need to look at it in precisely that many ways to figure out what it is our weakness as human beings are that keeps us from getting to the actual part of it.
Great. Last question for the group. All of us have been in a position in our lives where we are facing someone who we know that we're going to disagree with, right? I was giving a lecture to a church group not too long ago, and every single person thought I was going to hell. So, right, it's a hard thing to be standing there. So what advice can you give to all of us about standing before a group of people with whom you might disagree, and how do you prepare yourself for that moment? Because it takes a lot of guts and a lot to be able to do that.
I've been there. I've been in front of groups that were almost entirely opposed to my point of view. Data and facts don't change minds. And I have found that I have to temper it with emotion. And that I tempering it with emotion helps to create and reveal a little bit of the human side to you so that they know, yeah, I'm not a robot, I'm still human. We have emotions, even though we rely on data, a lot of that. And then it allows them to kind of break down a little bit too, and maybe give us some. But yeah, I don't think as a lobbyist, especially as a gun lobbyist, it's primarily, my colleagues and I would just use data and facts. And I have often told them, I said, you can't do that. You got to use emotion. You have to temper it with emotion, and you have to, and that kind of gets you out there. It kind of puts you out there. and makes you a little bit more vulnerable, because we aren't. We have to understand we are vulnerable whether we want to admit it or not.
There's a great scene in one of my favorite movies, Pat. So it's just for the Battle of the Bulge, and they need air cover to be able to go into the battle. And it's snowing, horrible weather, no chance for aircraft to overhaul. And they're like, well, maybe we need to hold off on this. And Patton screams at every one of them and says, no, we're moving forward. I don't care if every man dies. Okay? And everyone is doing this thing. And then he's walking away, and the colonel, who is his basically secretary for him, says, you know, General, if you keep doing that one of these times, you never know if they're going to actually believe you, or they're going to actually think you're that crazy. And he says, it doesn't matter if they think I'm crazy. It matters if I think I'm crazy. So, in other words, point being that, and so this gets to how I deal with it, is that, you know, I have to be rigorous with myself about what I think I know, what I have learned, what I constantly continue to learn. And I have to know in myself if what I'm doing is right, whether it's thoughtful of others, whether it is morally good and appropriate. And if I haven't done that rigorously for myself, then I can't go into situations like that. I think that's the number one thing that every person should do.
All right. Going from emotion, and I'll answer it. Hello, Nori, where are you? So he had to go. Okay, never mind the story then. Well, Hello, Nori is a friend of mine here who is the Clark of here, a pro-gun person. And I don't know what happened to me one afternoon, but I called him and I said, hello, I'm interested in going to a shooting range. It was like out of a cartoon. Before I could hang up, he was at my front door. And he took a video and sent it to Clark. And I think Clark texted back, I'm weeping right now. But, and this segues into the final piece here. I think the reason we have to talk is the reason I do is I think the thing that may change people or break down the barriers, lower the temperature, is hearing somebody's story. It used to be Harvey Milk in the late 70s said that you have to know somebody who's in the issue that you want to fight for. So for him, for gay rights, people had to come out and people had to know somebody who was gay. Evan Wilson, who has worked on marriage equality and meets with the groups these summers, and has told us actually the research is just if you talk to somebody, that person doesn't have to be impacted by the issue, but just a connection, hearing their story. So I think that that's really the reason and what it's all about. And this is why I appreciate all of y'all being up here today talking. And I think when you can find the humanity in the other person, then that's how we start to change. You can argue up here, but if you can find the connection here, it changes everything there. So I want to thank y'all so much.